Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment with peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
I'm going to read a poem Wayne wrote in 2004. He said this poem reflected how he saw his life and how he wanted to be remembered after death. The poem is called The Wind. Like the wind, we move along, touching everything along the way, not knowing the effect we have on those not directly in our path, but wanting to stir those we hit head on. Like the wind, we have chilled some and heated others. Like the wind, we have climbed mountains set before us to arrive at this place in our lives. And we have moved across plains that provide no resistance to us, thinking the easiest is because of us, when it is not. Like the wind, we have at times blown to no avail, puffing and puffing among those who do not care. Like the wind, our best moments were when we were gentle, when we were whispering in the ears of our loved ones, being soft and kind, as if we were talking to a newborn baby at rest. And like the wind, we too will pass and will be replaced by other winds. And they will cycle through the same phases, blow mightily, and again whisper when whispering is needed. We know not when we will no longer be a wind, but while we are, let us touch softly, move gently, and create a warm breeze that will be remembered by those we want to be remembered by.
My brother is going to read Life Lessons from Pops.
I hope you noticed when you came into the chapel a picture to my right. It's my very favorite picture of my father and me. But I have to make a couple of comments about this picture. Now, you adults from 30 years ago, you sure wore some goofy glasses. Mom and Dad, I don't know why you let your kid dress like that for a formal picture. It's a Dallas Cowboys shirt. I didn't like the Cowboys. It looked like thinking. But it is my very, very favorite picture of my father and I look forward to taking it home back to Wichita with me tomorrow. I wanted to start out telling you about my dad with a very simple, concise sentence. And I thought I would have a difficult time coming up with that sentence. But actually I didn't. It came right to me. So here it is. My father is the reason that I wanted to be a father. And let me tell you through some stories about a few life lessons that I learned from Pops. I was about 8 or 9 years old, about the same age as my boys, Adam and Zach. And we were out at my great aunt and uncle's farm in Archie, Missouri. And it was dead of winter. It was very cold. sorry, Alan, but you're never going to get me back on a tractor again, but I'm not a farm kid. And I knew my dad sensed that. So on this particular day, he came up to me and asked me if I wanted to go out to the catfish pond. Of course I did, absolutely. I was ready to go do something fun. Despite the cold, I was ready. So we put on our warm winter jackets and our stocking caps and our gloves. And we walked out the back door. We walked past the barn where they milked the cows. We went through the fields. We carefully went through a couple of barbed wire fences. And we came upon the catfish pond. It was frozen solid. My dad walked out to make sure. He invited me out. And for a minute or two, we slid around on the pond together. And then he reached into his back right pocket, and he pulled out what was the perfect shape of a hockey puck. It was his can of Skull. And he set it on the ground, in the ice, and said, let's go find ourselves a couple of hockey sticks and play hockey. Now, if you know me, I'm a sports nut, and I've been a sports nut since I was a little boy. I was delighted. This was going to be great. So we went over to the woods, and we found a couple of perfect-sized shaped sticks, hockey sticks. We went back out on the ice, and on each end of the pond, we set up 2 goals. And my dad was ready to play, so he took his hockey stick, and he reared it back, gave that can of Skull a big whack, and poof! Skull went everywhere. Now, I don't know why this happened next. I don't know if he was mad because he just ruined a perfectly good can of Skull, or if he saw the utter disappointment on his son's face. I thought our hockey game was over. But that didn't stop my dad. He walked over to the edge of the pond, and with his stick, he chipped off a piece of ice, came back with it, and it was the perfect shape of a hockey puck. And he tossed it down on the ground, and we started playing hockey. And I don't know if we played for 5 minutes or an hour. I don't remember it being cold at all. All I remember is that this was the first time in my life that I experienced pure joy. Let me tell you another story. I was about the same age, 8 or 9. And Dad and I were on a canoe trip together, just the 2 of us, floating down some river in Missouri. It started to rain, so we decided it would be good to pull over and have lunch. So we paddled over to the side, the riverbank, hopped out of the canoe, drug it up onto the shore, and my dad saw 2 trees where the trunks were split in a fork-like shape. And the trees were close together, so we drug the canoe over to the trees, we turned it upside down, held it up, and put both ends of the canoe into the forked end of the trees. We now had a perfect canopy, a shelter. So we got underneath the canopy, and we had a bucket that we kept all of our supplies in. And he asked me to open the bucket and get our lunch out. So I took the lid off, pulled out a can of stir lime, which is, it's a small can with a solid fuel that you light that makes a flame. We use it for cooking. So I handed him the can, he lit it, and set it up to a nice pedestal. And then I reached back into the bucket and pulled out our lunch, which was a can of SpaghettiOs. So we go high class, us Dyers, when we go to SpaghettiOs. Actually, what better thing for a 9-year-old boy than a can of SpaghettiOs, right? And he set the can on top of the flame and started cooking lunch. Well, a few minutes later, it started raining harder. And boom, thunder. With thunder comes lightning. And it was very close to us. So I said, Pops. He said, yes, sonny boy. I said, it's lightning. He said, yes, I see that. So I pointed up at the canopy. I said, you know what's above us, right? It's a giant metal canoe. He looked up. I said, you're right. What do you think we should do about that? And I said, let's go find another shelter. He said, no, I'm not going out in the rain. I'm too hungry. Let's eat. Okay, so we started to get our lunch ready. And finally, the can of SpaghettiOs was hot enough to eat. So he asked me to reach into the bucket and grab the can opener. So I looked into the bucket, didn't see a can opener. Reached around, no can opener. Handed the bucket to my dad. He looked in, no can opener. We kind of looked at each other and chuckled. Well, my dad, not one to be deterred, grabbed a rock from next to where we were sitting and started beating can of SpaghettiOs, trying to poke a hole. Well, that didn't work. But he doesn't give up. So he pulled out his car keys, and he took one of his keys and stuck it on top of the can and used that rock and the key like a hammer and nail and poked 2 small holes into the can of SpaghettiOs. And for the next 20 minutes, in a driving thunderstorm, videos back and forth, sucking our lunch out. We laughed the whole time. It was wonderful. Now, there's something about these two stories that I think my father was teaching me about fatherhood at that time. And what I think is the secret to fatherhood. You know, we're these adventures that we are, that we were on. Did they have anything to do with the amount of money that my dad spent on me? No, definitely not. Were we in some exotic location that kids dream about going to, amusement parks and water parks and Legoland and Disney World? No, we weren't there. What happened here was one simple thing that he taught me. My father spent time with me. That's it. That's the secret to fatherhood. He taught me. Now, fast forward about a year later, I was 9 or 10, 3rd or 4th grade. And believe it or not, I was short for my age. I've since grown out of that. So back then I was short. And kids being kids, I was made fun of for being short. Because I was bullied to a great degree for being short. So, you know, the first few times I would come home crying, and I would run, jump into my father's big arms, and he would hug me and whisper into my ear, "It'll be okay." And they were very comforting words. Well, about the 3rd or 4th time this happened, I got bullied at school for being short, and I came running home, and I was about to run and leap into my father's arms. Instead, this time he stopped me. He got down on one knee, and he put his hands to my shoulders, and he looked me square in the eye. Now, what I'm thinking is, this is the moment he is going to teach me the secret of the ninja. I'm going to go back to school tomorrow and use the crane technique. Hulk Hogan body slam. I'm going to go kick some bully butt, right? I'm ready. All right, Dad, wise one, teach me. I'm ready. And that's not what happened. He looked me in the eye, and he said, "Son, those boys are right. You are short. And you're going to be short your entire life. Get over it." He took his hands off my shoulder, just stood up, turned around, and walked away. Left me standing there, confused. Get over it? That's your solution? This is my great grasshopper moment? Get over it. Guess what? I got over it. I didn't get much taller, but I got over it. And the funny thing is, when the other kids figured out that I didn't care that something as inconsequential in life, such as the height of a person, mattered one bit, they quit making fun of me. I think there's two lessons that my father taught me here. One is that he caused me, by saying get over it, he caused me to make my own decision about what was important in my life, about how I felt about myself. And I did get over it. But the second thing he taught me was really what I thought my first lesson in tolerance was, and how you perceive others and what their perceived inadequacies are and how you're going to treat them. And I took that to heart, so much so that from that day forward, I stopped making fun of people 5'5" or taller for being cursed for being tall. So now you tell people I'm laughing at that joke, but I assure you my dad is rolling. And now I want to tell you a story about my hero. Now you're probably thinking that this is a story about my father. And my father is my hero in so many ways, and a hero to so many others. But he would be proud beyond belief to hear that this story is about his daughter, my sister. I knew this was the part I was going to have trouble. My sister is the most amazing person, male or female, I've ever met. She can do anything. She and I both went to the United States Air Force Academy. She was 2 years ahead of me at the academy. And so, after I graduated high school in May of 1992, I faced a summer of basic training in Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy. And basic training there is 6 weeks long, and it's divided into 2 3-week periods where the first 3 weeks you have one set of upper class cadets teaching you, and the second week you have a second set of upper class cadets teaching you. And my sister was going to be one of the instructors for the second half of basic training. Now, of course, before I left, I quizzed her on everything there was to know about the Air Force Academy. So I thought I was going to be prepared for what was going to happen to me. And I tell you that those first 3 weeks were very, very difficult for me. I'm not ashamed to admit that. It was really hard on me emotionally and mentally. And I didn't think I was going to make it. Until one day. And I knew my sister had reported back to the academy to get ready for her job as an instructor. I knew she was there somewhere, but I hadn't seen her. And on this particular day, my squadron and I were on a balcony that surrounded what ended up being our academic building at the Air Force Academy. And there's a wall around that balcony, and if you look over the wall, you see a giant rectangle. It's called the terrazzo. If you've ever been out there, it's the place where you watch the cadets march to noon in formation. And on that particular day, I wandered over to the wall, and I looked over the wall, and I immediately saw my sister. She has a walk that we can't forget. I saw her right there. And this instant feeling of peace fell upon me. And I truly believe that she passed her courage to me at that moment. And that is why she's my hero. Because I knew I was going to make it through basic training. I knew I would make it through my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year. I knew I would do it. Because she'd done it. She could do anything. And she passed that courage to me. And I know that my dad would be proud to hear me say, she's my hero. If you're looking for a role model for your kids, you need to meet my sister. If you want to see siblings who can be the best of friends, you need to come and hang out with Lisa and me. Now I want to talk briefly about growing up a child of Wayne and Pam Dyer. In our house, there was no yelling. There was no violence. The phrases, you can't, you're not big enough, you're not fast enough, you're not smart enough, those phrases were never said in my house. There was no discussion about race or racism or religious intolerance or politics or anything like that. But I know that sacrifices were made by my mom and dad. I know that there were places they probably would have rather have been at every single one of my soccer games, and there were a lot. There was always at least one, if not both of them there. I know there were career aspirations that were put on hold or maybe even never pursued or canceled because they knew that it wasn't the best move for the family. I know sacrifices were made. And you know, we were certainly aware that other people had more financial means than we did, but I thought I was the richest kid in the world. Because in our house, we didn't measure richness on a monetary scale. We measured it on love. And there was more love in our house than there is in the United States Treasury. Maybe not today. And speaking of the money thing, the idea that you could be whatever you wanted to be was the #1 theme in the Dyer house, being a child of Wayne and Pam Dyer. Now, although my dad passed away last Thursday evening, he is not gone. I know this because I see him every day. When I look in the mirror, I see him. When I go for my annual physical every year, and they measure me, and I'm still 5'4" and a half. I know I'm the son of Wayne Dyer. I see him in my sister, in my uncles, in my cousins. And I see him in 2 boys named Adam and Zach. The way they're built, the way they walk, the way they smile. I see his sense of humor and his mischievousness. And I hear him up here a lot. I hear him say things like, when I screw up, I hear him telling me, Scott, it's It's okay to feel. You have to feel. That's the best way to learn. And I hear him say, who cares what your wife Susan or your sister Lisa or your mother say about that hole in your pants? Keep wearing them because they're just now getting comfortable. I want to leave you with a final story, one that I hope we can all take with us this evening, because to me it sums up perfectly how I know my father feels right now. This is my final lesson that I learned from my father. He would want me to share with you. When I was at the Air Force Academy, I had a very, very special friend. His name is Mark. I met Mark on our first day of basic training. And let me describe this first day to you. It is pure chaos, sucked. It is indoctrination quick. It's a tough deal. And towards the end of the day, I'd finally gone through that stage. Finally went into my room. Walked in my room, threw my duffel bag down, closed the door, looked in the mirror. There I was, shaved head, my birth control glasses on. Those even military are familiar with those. And I was staring at myself, feeling very sorry for myself. And about a minute later, the door comes flying open. In comes the big, tall, blonde, surfer-looking dude from California. He throws his bag down on the ground, jumps on it, and he's laughing. So I closed the door. He looked up at me, jumped right up, came over, introduced himself, said, "Hi, I'm Mark." I introduced myself to him and asked him why he was laughing. And he said, "This is going to be quite an adventure." And right then, Mark and I bonded instantly. And there is so much that Mark is alike with my dad. Everything with my dad was an adventure. Everything new was an adventure. He was fearless. And that's how I felt with Mark. And Mark was my roommate. He was one of the people that just helps you get through the tough times. And Mark, his dream was to fly for the Air Force. He was well on his way of achieving that dream. Our junior year, February, he was up flying with his instructor pilot, and they crashed. And he died. And you can imagine how difficult that was for everybody that knew Mark, and particularly me. And I struggled with it mightily. And a couple of days after he died, I was on the phone with my dad. And my dad knew Mark. And again, my dad and Mark were so much alike. And he said to me, he said, "Scott, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. You're going to have sleepless nights. You're going to have times when you think of Mark, and it's going to seem unbearable that he's gone. All of that is okay. But the best way, the only way to honor Mark, because of what he would want, is to keep on living." And that is my dad's lesson to all of us today, is that we're going to have those times when we're sad, when we're angry, when we need to cry, when we need to reach out to someone. And all of that is okay. But for my dad's sake, for all of our sake, we must and we will keep on living. I want to thank each of you for sharing your lives with my father. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of the life lessons that he taught me this evening. Thank you.
I knew I should have asked to go first. I'd like to read to you a letter to Dad. Before Christmas, Father's Day, or a birthday, Scott and I would ask Dad for his gift wish list. Dad would always say, "I don't need anything. Write a letter telling me how lucky you are to have me as your father." Often we'd ignore this advice and instead buy him clothes, books, or other material things. But this evening, I'd like to share with you what I'd include in a letter to Dad. My letter to Dad would first thank him for being actively present in our lives. During our weekly phone calls, sometimes daily phone calls, depending upon how tough I felt life was treating me, he asked not just about me and my life, but also wanted to hear about my giant and our dogs. Dad always knew the right words to comfort us whenever one of our beloved dogs passed away. He always knew the right thing to say. When Scott and I were kids, Dad attended all of our after-school events. He cheered us on whether we came in first or last, or scored on penalty kicks or not. He remembered the names of our friends and their parents. We shared secrets. And I always knew I could survive those scary doctor's visits and the big kids' roller coasters with Dad sitting by my side, holding my hand. And if we were passionate about something, Dad was passionate about it too. I'd like to share a few stories with you about this. Star Wars captivated me when I was a little girl, much like it's captivated Adam and Zach. I was so enthusiastic that I dressed up as Princess Leia for Halloween in 2nd grade, complete with the cinnamon bun hair and the white flowing robes, which were made by Mom. Dad and I saw episodes 1, 2, and 3. That's 4, 5, and 6 to you, Adam and Zach. In the movie theater, which was an extremely big deal. And Dad learned all of the characters' names so that we could have a continuing conversation about this story that captivated me so. Another story. Dad took Scott and me to the arcade every week, splitting $5 worth of quarters among the three of us. He was just as excited about getting the high score on Gallagher and his Pac-Man as we were. It was fun to watch him, and it was like having another sibling in that arcade with us. Many of you went to our house in Purcell Road in Lee Summit when we lived there before. For many years, the side yard sported a regulation-size outdoor soccer goal built by Dad, which is a mean feat in and of itself, and had no abilities, just so Scott could continue to practice scoring goals in this game of soccer that he was so passionate about. A little bit longer story I want to share with you. When I was a sophomore in high school, my cheerleading squad had an opportunity to attend a national competition in Hawaii. I found a letter in Dad's files this week written by an anonymous parent to the other parents, the school administrators, and the sponsors of the cheerleading squad. In it, this parent said that he was proud of our accomplishments, but I am not quite convinced that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. As a parent, I feel a very strong obligation to stress to my children the value of an education. I expect the school district to provide the necessary facilities and teachers so that every child can have the opportunity to get along in this world and to get along happily. It is then our responsibility as a parent to see that our children seize that opportunity. Later on, the anonymous parent writes, "A wonderful thing has happened since the days of the one-room schoolhouse. And that is a series of programs called extracurricular activities. I think they are named quite well by being named extra. I applaud those people involved and try to support those programs because they are valuable. It is sometimes difficult, however, to keep in mind that they are extra. This is where I see the disadvantage of going to a national competition at her stage in life. I think that there are too many other things that she is participating in that are more important to her development than one national competition. Family is first. Classroom education is second. Social development, which includes extracurricular activities, is close to the top of the list, but it is not as important. My father was that anonymous parent. Yet, once a collective decision was made to participate in the national competition, this anonymous parent became one of our squad's most dedicated and creative fundraisers. The cow pie bingo contest represented one of those more creative fundraising events. A temporary fence was placed around the perimeter of the practice football field, and equally sized squares were spray painted on the ground. Dad arranged for a cow to be delivered to this particular practice field. The winner of the contest picked the correct square where the cow just happened to. Well, you get it. The joke was actually kind of on Dad. He stood out in the field for several hours waiting to announce the winner. This particular cow had the world's slowest digestive system, in spite of its many stomachs. My letter to Dad would also thank his irrepressible enthusiasm and optimism, sharing that with us. I will never forget that amazing, wicked smile and the sound of that laugh, that deep, deep laugh that just showed that he was enjoying spending every moment with you. He got knocked down a lot in his life, but he didn't let it get him down for too long. His motto was, "It builds character," and man, what a character he was. I wasn't always able to appreciate his enthusiasm or his optimism, but as an adult, I now realize the importance of these invaluable and priceless gifts. My letter to Dad would also thank him for sharing his incredible wealth with us. As Scott mentioned, Dad wasn't wealthy in the material sense, far from it. His wealth came from the things that mattered most to him, everyone in this room. The love he gave to and received from his family and friends. Dad's files are filled with love letters and poems written to Mom, dating from the days in college when he was pursuing her. These letters must have been extremely persuasive and extremely romantic, because that man was fortunate to be loved by her for over 45 years. Dad delighted in hearing about Adam and Zach's latest adventures, and even better when he was able to join in those adventures with you two. He loved spending time with his family and friends, whether he was cooking over a campfire, mushroom hunting with his friends Ed and Mushroom Dog, churning homemade ice cream at his daughter's special request, swapping stories with his brother David, and man, those two can talk, taking a zany trip halfway across the country with his brother-in-law Steve in pursuit of an old car, spending time on the dairy farm with Uncle Ted, Alan, Doug, everyone, having coffee at McDonald's with his fellow drivers, or taking his grandsons and nieces and nephews and their friends for tractor rides around his property in Dade City. Dad had an extremely special place in his heart for kids, especially those who were having a tough time or were being picked on by others. He called them his special kids, and I'm sure he greeted them every day with that big smile and asked about their day. And then, most importantly, he listened to what they had to say. How am I so sure he did this? Because that is how he treated Mom, Scott, and me each day. I would close my letter to Dad by saying, thank you, Dad, for being a part of our lives, for spreading your enthusiasm and optimism, and for sharing your wealth of love with us. It has been an honor and a privilege to be your favorite daughter. All my love, Lisa.